So today we're going to have two Antonias on stage, which is fantastic. So our guest today is Antonia. She is a super experienced product manager and coach, and also a community builder. She grew up, I think, in Scotland, if I'm not mistaken, Switzerland, and then in Scotland. And it's really great to have her here because when she decided to become a freelancer, a lot of people, which some of you might know, shared their opinions, ideas, and she came up with a fantastic strategy on how to actually figure out what it is that you want. And I think she's going to share a lot of that with us today. So thank you so much for being here, Antonia. Great to have you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Ooh, I'm loud. So I was really hoping to be able to see my slides here. So forgive me if every so often I turn my back to you. First of all, thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's always nice to meet another Antonia. And yes, as Antonia mentioned, I'm a product operations consultant and coach. And today, I would like to take you on a little journey. This was me on the 23rd of December, 2022. I was super ready to dive into Christmas, spending time with my family in Switzerland. Very happy to show off my latest charity shop find, and also very ready to eat my entire body weight in Christmas biscuits. I was also blissfully unaware that just a few days afterwards, the company I was working for basically broke up with me over the phone just 4 days before the end of my probation period. Bless you. Now, this breakup in itself wasn't necessarily a bad thing. To be honest, I kind of had a horrible time at that company, and I was kind of glad that it was over. Could we maybe close the door? Thank you. That's not part of the speech. So yes, I was very glad that that engagement was over, but it did leave me with one very important question. What next? You see, at that time, I believe that was the 8th employer in the 6.5 years I had been living in Berlin. And I was pretty disenchanted with the whole thing. I knew I could go on to finding job applications that were relevant to my role, interviewing, applying, going through several different rounds, and then hopefully eventually getting another job. But it didn't sound very appealing, I must admit. Like I said, I was pretty disenchanted with the product and tech scene at that time. So having to learn and subscribe to yet another company culture was not something that I really wanted to do. The thing is, in product operations, I do a very niche job. And let me explain product ops just a little bit so that you understand where my journey is taking me. I knew I wanted to stay in product ops. It's a niche, fairly new specialization within product management, and as product ops managers, we all have one mission: to help product organizations become more effective. I sometimes talk about this as giving product managers the tools, there you go, frameworks and access to data they need to do their best job. I'm an enabler in the best sense of the word. I am there to help people succeed. That's what brings me joy, and I think that's what I'm good at. So I knew I wanted to stay in the role. But as I was trawling through job ad after job ad, I started wondering something. What if I could do more? What if, instead of helping one company get better at doing product, I could help many companies get better at doing product? What if, instead of navigating narrow or ill-defined job descriptions, instead of having to learn and understand internal company politics and navigating other people's ego, I could just actually get on with my life and do my job. Now, the problem with this is that at the time, I was an incredibly regimented person with my finances. I had a very clear idea of the goals I wanted to achieve and by when I wanted to achieve them. So while I started understanding that maybe freelancing could finally offer me the opportunity to have a work life that I really wanted, one that honed in on my strengths and weaknesses, I also saw something else. I saw risk, and tons of it at that. Risk of failure, risk of being a specialist in too niche a field, risk of not finding any clients, failing miserably, not being able to pay my bills, and then having to go find another full-time job anyway. So I did what I think any sane person would do, and I started de-risking. I started talking to everybody. I read every single possible article there is about how to break into freelancing. I spoke to people who'd been doing it for decades. I got as much advice as I possibly could, from the kind of aggressive to the borderline spiritual. I started calculating my minimum necessary income. I started adjusting my goals and targets. And then, I believe it was the 22nd of February last year, I proudly announced my path into solopreneurship on LinkedIn. And all of this advice did not help one single bit. Not because the advice I got was inherently bad, but because for a lot of it, I felt like it wasn't written for me. It didn't consider my personality, my strengths and weaknesses, and my values. Now, going freelance has been an incredible exercise in trusting myself. And so, trust myself, I did. And for every single piece of advice that didn't sit right, that made me feel uncomfortable, I decided to stop listening. I decided to stop researching. I decided to stop de-risking. And today, I'd like to talk about 5 common pieces of advice that I stopped listening to and what I did instead. Number 1, niche down. Now, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I have niched down to the max, right? 99% of what I talk about and do is to do with product operations. And yes, product operations has been my main subject matter for the last 4 years. And I do a lot in that space. But the thing is, I do so much more, especially as a freelancer. I coach product managers. I sometimes tutor career switchers. I train PMs. I do some career coaching on the side. I'm a community builder. I coach product ops people. I'm an evangelist for the role, and I do product operations work myself. And while I do all of these things, I do not have an ideal client profile. One of the earliest pieces of advice I got was define your ICP and then go after it relentlessly. And it was from somebody I really admired and really respected. And she even gave me a bunch of resources, like book recommendations, articles, and canvases to fill out, so that I could define my ICP successfully and get a kickstart into my new freelancing career. But nevertheless, I felt really restricted by this. If you're incredibly clear on the fact that you want to help Series B startups with more than 200 employees and 500 million ARR, then so be it, because that's what gives you focus. But an ICP is not what gives me focus. My mission is what gives me focus, right? Focus is important, but how you define your own focus doesn't necessarily need to be an ideal client profile. And for me, as I started questioning what my focus actually is, it became pretty clear. I help people build better product organizations. Everything I do is in service of that mission. And if something comes across my desk that doesn't allow me to do exactly this, I'm not going to do it. With freelancing, you have the freedom to define the positive change you want to affect in the world. To me, it's my mission. Number 2, don't do things for free. Now, this is something I have heard my entire career, and even more so when I started freelancing, right? Don't give away your time for free. Don't hop on calls, on coaching calls with people for free. Your time is now your currency. Ask people to pay what you're worth. Here's the thing. I genuinely believe that the only reason I have come this far is because I have given away my time for free. The only reason anyone in product operations knows who I am is because I have written for publications for free. It's because I have given talks just like these in person and online for free. It's because I will literally speak to anyone who asks. So when I got this piece of advice, not only did it feel quite restrictive to me, it felt almost like people were asking me to become inauthentic in a way. As Antonia mentioned, I'm a huge community person. I love paying it forward. If I think I can help you, I will gladly do so. And some people might look at my weekly calendar and look at all of the coffee chats I have scheduled with random people off LinkedIn. They will look at the networking events I go to and the meetups I both organize and join. They will look at the amount of feedback I give to people building new products for the product ops audience. And honestly, they would be forgiven for thinking that I am wasting my time day in and day out with things that just don't matter, with things that don't move the needle. And I could tell you about the concrete amount of money I have gotten from one of these free coffee chats that turned into something more, but I'd actually would like to talk about something else. And it's increasing your area of luck, sometimes also called increasing your surface area of luck. Now, we think of luck as something completely random, right? Of something serendipitous. Sometimes it happens to us, sometimes it doesn't. Who knows how it works? But I don't actually think that's entirely true. Now, one of my very first managers told me, you know, the funny thing about luck is that I always seem to be more lucky when I work the hardest. And actually, there is a good hypothesis behind this. Now, it's been hypothesized that the surface area of luck, or your chance of being lucky, is equivalent to the action you take towards your passion, multiplied by the number of people you effectively communicate your passion and activities to. Put simply, luck equals passionate doing multiplied by effective telling. Now, all of these free coffee chats I have, they give me a chance to display my value. All of these random encounters with people I have today might not be relevant in the next 2 to 4 weeks, but maybe 6 months from now, they will blossom into a really interesting partnership. So, yeah, I will continue to do things for free, even though it is absolutely unscalable. And speaking of unscalable, number 3, only do things that scale. Now, just like the previous thing, don't do things for free, this is one that I have heard absolute countless times. Okay. So when I got back into conferencing last year, I made a very deliberate choice. I knew that I wanted to do multiple conferences a year, not just because of the visibility, but because I genuinely enjoy this type of work. But also, having been an avid conference goer, I understood just how frustrating it is to go see a thought leader whose insights you really appreciate, just to find out that they're giving exactly the same talk they gave 8 years prior. So I knew that I wanted to do things a bit differently, and I've committed myself to bringing something new to the table every single time I speak at a conference. Now, my product management peers saw the intent behind it, and they quite appreciated it. But my freelancing friends were absolutely aghast. They say, Antonia, you cannot do this. You cannot write 4 new talks every single year. You're going to drive yourself mad. This won't scale. Now, this won't scale, I think, is probably the favorite thing for a freelancer to tell another freelancer. And you know what? They are completely right. The things I do and the way I do them doesn't scale. But why is that a problem? When I make a delicious batch of brownies at home, am I going to worry about how I'm going to deliver 200 of them if that ever came up? No. I make a delicious batch of brownies and I enjoy them with my husband, resting happily knowing that I've made something special. So why do we worry about 10xing our business if we haven't even cracked 1x? Why worry about how you're going to scale something if you haven't even proven that it works? Why worry about your IPO when you haven't even found product market fit? The most successful companies we know today started as things that didn't scale. The Airbnb founders rented out rooms in their own apartment. Jeff Bezos was buying and selling the first Amazon books himself to prove that it works. In the early days of Groupon, they were mailing out PDF vouchers to people individually. And just like a lean startup, your first years in freelancing are all about learning. They're all about figuring out your messaging, figuring out your price point, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and what you enjoy doing and what you don't enjoy doing. So why worry about scalability? Okay, so these last 2 things are things that are probably the most contentious, I think. And they are things that people will die on a hill for. But bear with me for a moment. Number 4, you don't need a content strategy. I started becoming active on LinkedIn in, was it mid-2020? Something like that. And at the beginning, I was just sharing articles I found online, things that I found interesting. Sometimes I was sharing why I thought these articles were interesting. Over time, I started sharing more and more of my own experience. what it was like to break into product management from quality assurance, what I wish I had known. And then eventually, as I got into product ops, I started sharing more and more about that role as well. And while every so often I would give myself certain guidelines, for example, trying to post 3 times a week, I never really restricted what I would post about. Because I don't think there is value in that. Now, somebody recently told me this at a meetup. She said, I can always rely on you to say the things that everybody's thinking, but nobody's willing to say out loud. And I take this so seriously. Today, I think I have around 7,500 followers, and while that's really very little compared to the big leagues, I do take this super seriously. And I do take this kind of feedback super seriously. I love going to meetups and hearing from people say that I wish I had somebody like you when I was breaking into product, or I wish I had you as my mentor or my manager or my coach when I was going through something horrible. And I'm so glad you are spreading the voice now. The thing is, when a week passes and I don't have anything to say, I'm not going to force myself to say anything. When a week passes and I don't explicitly mention product operations to my ICP, I'm not going to worry about that, because I know that the content that routinely performs the best is the content that's most authentic. Now, I have a hard time writing long-form articles for some reason, but LinkedIn really suits me. It suits my personality, because all you really need is a strong opinion you think needs to be shared in about 10 to 15 minutes of your own time. So no, I don't have a content strategy, and I'm not going to change that, because I am interested in a lot of different things. A lot of different things resonate with me, and I have figured out that the things that resonate with others are the things that I am also genuinely passionate about. I don't have a content schedule. I have no scheduled posts. If I want to post something, I will post it. If I don't want to post something, I won't post it. I have never generated a post using ChatGPT or any other tools, and I don't want to change that anytime soon. Now, last but not least, the biggest one of them all, you need a sales funnel. And first of all, I would like to apologize to whoever is in this picture. I don't mean to make any snap judgments, but this man sadly happened to look exactly like the kind of thing I was trying to avoid. But let's talk about that avoidance for a minute. One of the earliest and most obvious questions I had to ask myself when I was even considering freelancing was, how am I going to get clients? And it's this question that probably generated the most advice, and also the most advice I was deeply uncomfortable with. Things I heard ranged from go into other people's LinkedIn comment sections and display your value, to find your ICP, find their email and cold email them, to get them on a call and hit them over the head with this foolproof sales script for only $7.99. All of them made me cringe. And it wasn't just because I was often at the receiving end of such messages, but because I couldn't help but feel that it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work for me, and it wouldn't work for my niche. Now, let's indulge me for a second, because let's play this through. Hello, my name is Antonia, and I do freelance product operations. Freelance what? Product operations. Okay, What is product operations? Well, I am glad you asked. You see, I help product organizations like yours be more effective, and I do this by giving your PMs the tools, frameworks, and access to data they need to do their best work. Broadly speaking, I remove barriers to product management excellence, but of course what those barriers look like is different in every company. So my work can range from upskilling PMs to working together with data teams to make dashboards more accessible. Sometimes I even work with commercial teams, such as customer success or sales, to close feedback loops and ensure PMs have all the information they need to make good decisions. I also look at communication strategies and how your organization communicates within the product and engineering organization and with the wider org. Lastly, I can help with goal-setting frameworks like OKRs, so that you can reach your goals anytime you set them. Do you think this is something you'd be interested in? Sure, I'm blowing things out of proportion a little bit here, but do you know what I mean? There is so much pre-work required for me to even have this conversation with people in earnest in the first place. We need a base level of common understanding to even understand if there is a fit with what it is that I offer. So suddenly, my question wasn't, how will I get clients? My question was, how do I get that initial aha moment? Because that's what I need. And how do I get people there? And for me, the answer actually became pretty clear pretty quickly. You cannot get to aha without knowledge. Now, I'm very lucky in that I genuinely enjoy being an evangelist. I really love talking about product ops ad nauseum, as you might have noticed. I love engaging people in healthy debates around the role and what it's there to do. I know people for whom this is a nightmare scenario, right? I know people who hate posting on LinkedIn, who see conferences and meetups as a necessary evil, or who would be terrified of going in front of a camera or being on a podcast. So, to me, this worked quite well. And we switched questions. Now, these were the 5 things I wanted to talk about. And I'd like to take a little look at what we've learned so far. I don't have an ICP because I have a mission to give me focus. I do plenty of things for free, and I will continue to do so because I genuinely believe it increases my surface area of luck. I do things that don't scale because they help me find product market fit. And no, I do not have a content strategy because I value authenticity above all. And last but not least, I do not have a sales funnel because I focus on getting people to aha first. Because when they get to aha first, we can have a meaningful conversation. Now, this is all well and good, and we're nearly at the end of my talk. But if you've only just recently woken up, and you only take one thing away from my talk today, let it be this one. Don't do what I did. Just as I had to understand that all of the common advice out there didn't work for me, my personality, my strengths and weaknesses, my niche, and my values, so should you take the time to understand how you want to run your business. Don't let anybody else dictate how your business should run. You understand your niche best. You understand what's going to work and what's not going to work. Take in information by all means, but filter and evaluate based on your own values. Because only you know what will make you most successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia. If I would have to describe you in one word, it would literally be authenticity, because that was fantastic.
I'm glad.
So we have some time left for questions. Let me quickly check. There is one question already up here. For people that just recently joined, we do have the yellow posters on the side with the lower QR code where you can just basically ask your questions. One is, how is product operations different than agile coaching?
Yes, I love that question. So I'm going to generalize quite a lot here, but agile coaching typically looks more at the delivery part of getting products done, and product operations looks more at holistically how does work get done. Sometimes product ops looks specifically at the PM experience, sometimes it looks at product and engineering across the board. Another important distinction is that agile coaches are typically more embedded in teams, meaning they usually work with 1 or 3 cross-functional teams, while product ops really sits centrally.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You did briefly mention OKRs.
Yes.
Is that what you do, or is there another method that you think works best for you?
Yes, I love that. That was another huge learning. I started 2023 with 4 objectives, and each objective had at least 2 key results. I had metrics. I defined exactly what I wanted that year to look like, and I missed every single one, right? It was a complete exercise in futility. I think halfway through the year, I realized that, you know what, just scrap all of it. So I don't have any OKRs, I don't have any KPIs, apart from maybe being able to pay my bills. I'm really value and mission driven nowadays, and for now, it works super well. And I think even a lot of the things I talked about, right? I do things that aren't scalable, and for now that works. Eventually, I might have to reevaluate that, but I think finding that for now is super important.
Fantastic. Well, Antonia, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you with us. I think you're going to be around this afternoon if people have more questions to ask. Fantastic. So meet Antonia around here, and thank you for joining that talk.